Good morning, YouTube. Devin here again. Finally. Sorry it's taken so long again with the work schedule and all that, and trying to get a better job. It's been really hard to try to find time to make videos, especially, on top of doing laundry and eating and stuff. But we're back. We're back today. So today we got, as you could tell by the title, because you clicked on the video, we have the Hungarian M38 helmet. Now this one's actually a Finnish repurposed one, but there's still a lot of cool things about the Hungarian helmets that I think actually make them a little bit cooler and a little bit better than the German ones. One of the first things that I really like about the Hungarian design is it's a copy of the German design. The stahlhelm design is a very effective design, as we still see it in use today in many forms of the Pasget helmet. The Hungarians' stahlhelm-esque helmets would actually go all the way back to World War I. With the dissolution of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, they would obviously receive the Hungarian half after the dissolution of Austria-Hungary. Hungary would have M17 stahlhelm helmets, which were World War I German helmets, pretty much. The Austrian one's very little different in that the chin strap wasn't connected to the liner, or it wasn't put on lugs like the German M16 and the German M18s were. So the M18s had a chin strap connected to the liner itself, and the M16s and the M17s would have lugs down here on the skirt that you would put the chin strap on. The Austrians were a little bit different. They would have a rivet put in higher up that would hold in a swivel bail, just a rectangular swivel bail that you would attach a chin strap to, and it would be separate from the 3 rivets that would hold in the liner. So that would continue on actually into the next model of Hungarian helmet in 1935. Just after the Germans adopted their Model 35 helmet, the Hungarians would adopt their Model 35 helmet, which was for all intents and purposes the same shape and everything and same construction as the German M35 World War II era Stahlhelm, but it would maintain a little bit of difference and similarities closer to that Austrian M17 style of helmet. It would maintain a separate chin strap that wasn't connected to the liner, but it would be held in place with the same rivet. So the German helmet rivet layout is you would have 2 rivets up here, split pins, not rivets, 2 split pins up here by the temples of the helmets, and then you would have one in the rear. So you can see here that would hold in your liner, and your chin strap would be directly connected to your liner band. The Hungarians would do it a little bit different. They would have 2 split pins right on either side of the helmet, and then they would have one in the rear. And that would be all that would hold in the liner, and the chin strap would just go over that split pin before it would go through the liner. So you would have a chin strap that was not directly connected to the liner, which is good in a lot of ways because it keeps the production of the liners and everything, which were the parts that would wear out. Leather and cotton and aluminum do break and wear out after a while, especially if they're not being maintained super well. It just happens. So by having your chin strap separate from your liner, you don't need to junk the whole thing. So if your liner's good and your chin strap breaks, you just pull the split pins out, slide in your chin strap, put the split pins back in. You don't have to replace the whole liner like you would have to in the German designs. So the Hungarians liked that because it allowed them to ease manufacture a little bit, and they didn't have to junk and a whole helmet liner if it was still okay. They would use that basically until German occupation and everything like that. And in 1938, they would basically just kind of Germanize that design. They would keep the separate chin strap rivets, as you can still see here on this finished design, but they would move 2 liner rivets up here to the front. So they would just basically add 2 split pins, and it helped kind of stabilize the liner because there was nothing on the Hungarian M35 holding in the front of the liner up near where your forehead would go, which is obviously where like all the pressure is. So the liner could move just slightly inside the shell towards the front of the helmet, which is something that it was a minor inconvenience. So they just replaced it by moving the rivets more forward here. So which is how you get to the Hungarian M38. It's the same exact helmet as the Hungarian M35. It just has a different rivet layout. They just moved just added 2 extra little rivets or split pin holes or whatever, because in the Finnish ones are rivets, but in the Hungarian ones they would have been split pins. But this is a Finnish example, so the Hungarian M35 helmet would be used by Hungary and Finland, actually, which is why Finland ended up having so many M35s that would be later converted to M38s, often lovingly referred to as the M35-38. Finland would contract Hungary for 75,000 of them in the late 1930s before the Winter War, and they would receive them, and it would become one of their primary frontline helmets, along with the World War II era stahlhelms and the German, the later given German M40 helmets as 8. But the Hungarians really tended to like these, and the Finns really tended to like them for one feature that I really like them for. It's this little bracket here on the back. This little bracket here on the back allows you to connect this to your bag or something. You have a little strap with a hook on it, and you can connect this to your backpack, which is really great if you're Finnish because you need to ski or something. You don't want to have all that strain on your neck or on your helmet or anything. And you see a very famous picture of a lot of Finns with these helmets, and they are sitting here like this, and it is hooked to their equipment or their uniform where it is out of the way, and they're just wearing their caps, and they're all in formation. Because of this little bracket they put on there. Now the Germans would also have something similar to this, but they would make this complicated leather, like kind of hook thing that would go over the helmet to allow it to do the same thing for their mountain troops and stuff like that. The Hungarians just put a little bracket on there, and you could route an equipment strap through there with the just regular buckle, or they would make little things that would clip over this that would have little, clasp hooks and stuff on them. And so the Finns really, really liked that. The Hungarians really, really liked that. The Germans, after becoming allies with Hungary, they did side with the Axis powers in World War II. Well, you would see these pressed into service, especially with SS units and everything like that, because it is, for all intents and purposes, a still very high-quality German stahlhelm, just a little bit different of a liner layout. Now, the original Finnish ones and the Hungarian ones would have a more World War I style liner with those kind of 3, it would still be a full leather liner on an aluminum piece of on an aluminum liner band, but it would have kind of the 6 tongues on the 3 pads layout that you would see on the World War I era stahlhelms. The Finnish ones and the Hungarian ones would have that. You would later, most of them you would see during World War II and post-war get kind of this German style World War II liner put in them, where you have a lot of smaller tongues and this full circumference kind of leather band. Chin strap wouldn't change much. It would be just your brown leather standard roller buckle chin strap. The liner, it's very similar in sizing and styling to the German helmets as far as the shell sizes would go, and the liner size is size 58, obviously, because I wear a size 58. It's beautiful, unissued one. Like I said, this is a Finnish one that you can tell because it has this kind of light olive green paint on it. They would have used these during World War II and the immediate post-war. And in 1955, when they standardized in the M40, they would keep some of these for quite a while until they could make enough M55 helmets to supplement these. So these would actually continue to serve into like the 60s, but then they would be pretty much all surplused out. You could have this because they're all basically World War II made shells. Basically all the Hungarian M38s and M35s and M35 38s are all World War or pre-World War II produced shells. So it is a cool piece of history in that. You can get them for relatively cheap, especially compared to a lot of the German designs. People love spending a lot of money on the German helmets. You can get a Hungarian helmet, which was used by the Germans quite a lot, also by the Finns, by the Hungarians, by a lot of different people. You would see them used with Yugoslavian partisans, tons of different stuff like that. And it's a really, really good, basically M35 helmet. So, and later when they made the M38s, they just started to stamp in the eyelets here. Some of them have this anyways. So on this helmet, actually, one of them is a separate piece and one of them is fixed into the shell. Kind of weird. So I don't know what the dealio is with that. I don't know if this one got damaged and they put in a new vent hole or something. This helmet has had some dings pounded out of it, but you can see where this one doesn't have a very defined step. It's kind of rolled. And then this one does have a very, very defined step because this vent hole is a separate piece and this one is not. Don't know why. It was probably an M38, like I said. You could tell by these different rivets, and something happened to it, or it got damaged, and they replaced the vent hole. So I don't know. I have no idea. But it's just an interesting fact of this helmet that you probably will never see on any other helmet, or maybe, I don't know. There could be a reason for that. I'm not sure. It's all speculation. So, or maybe that one of them's just shaped really bad because whoever was making it shaped it really bad. But I'm not taking the paint off to really check because I like it in the condition it's in. But who knows? But based on just my observations. So, but obviously the Finnish rivets would change a little bit. They'd have these kind of washers and these smaller rivets. So a lot of the German ones would, and the Hungarian ones would have bigger, obviously, split pins, much like the more German designs. But this is a really affordable World War II helmet, actually. You could still get these for less than $200 in really, really, really good shape. And then all you would have to do is replace the liner, grind these rivets out, and you could put a German liner in it, and bam, you got a World War II stahlhelm. If you really, really wanted to, you could cut this off and convert it to be like an actual M40 helmet. I wouldn't, because the Germans did use the Hungarian M38s, and I kind of like these little brackets. I'd say just throw a burlap sandbag over it and some chicken wire and color good, because then it's an actual World War II produced kind of Hungarian helmet that was used by the Germans. If you're doing a Finnish impression, you can leave it exactly the way it is. The Finns used everything under the sun. Or if you're doing a Hungarian impression, it works really, really great for that. But it's a really, really cool actual piece of World War II history you can get for still relatively affordable compared to other options anyways. So, but it's a great helmet if you're looking for something to do like an SS impression, or if you're just looking for a World War II era stahlhelm. Hungarian 38's pretty up there. It's the closest you're going to get to a German design, really, a German copy made during the war for probably anything less than $500. It's probably as close as you're going to get. So you can find actual M35 models out there. Like I said, they wouldn't have these kind of front rivets or split pins. You could find the 35 models out there that have the two peripheral split pins and then the one in the rear. They are significantly more. They weren't made as long, not as many of them were made, and a lot of them were converted to 38 pattern much later, obviously. So there's not as many of them around, so they do cost more, but they are quite rare. So now we're gonna take this thing over to the table. We're gonna compare it to a Finnish M40-55, which is basically a German version, one of the most used German versions. The helmet before all the economy features come into like the M42, where they unrolled the rim and stuff like that. So we're going to compare it to that, take a look at the liner. It's going to be pretty much the same, but that would be the same liner that would be in the M35 and everything like that. So, and obviously Finland being one of the largest users of these helmets, this is where you're going to get most of them from. So it'll be cool to compare a Finnish M38 liner to a Finnish M40-55 liner. So we'll flip the camera around and we will do that right now. Alrighty, so here we are back. We're comparing these two Finnish helmets here. We have the Finnish M35-38, and there's a way to tell very easily if it was built as an M38 or if it was a converted 35 to a 38, because they're kind of hard to tell apart. But once again, we'll compare these two helmets where you can kind of see the very German version of the helmet, because the Finns never really produced or designed their own helmet per se. They always used designs from other countries, but they did produce the M55. A lot of them were converted. A lot of the World War II M40s and stuff were converted. They would obviously buy M40s and stuff from other countries and stuff after World War II as well, but they would convert M40s and start making M55s in 1955. When they would standardize on that, and they would continue. Actually, I saw a picture recently where these were actually still in use with some reserve units. I don't know if it was more of a joke picture, but you could see some Finnish Defense Force guys wearing these in the pictures. So they're around. They're not really in use. I think it was more of a gag or like a stage thing or just for fun, because soldiers get bored. But we're going to take a look at a comparison here between, the Hungarian 38 design and the German kind of M40 design. And then obviously they're both going to have Finnish liners, but other than that, so this one was an M40 that was later converted to a 55, and there's a couple ways to tell. And then there is a That you could tell this was an M35 converted to an M38 for one reason. It rocks. So the skirt actually has a, it's not flat. You can see it has this kind of taper up towards the rear of the helmet that only the Hungarian M35s had, which obviously made it a little bit easier to go prone with. That would be, as you can see, if I do that to the Finnish helmet, it just slides because it's perfectly flat, and that's kind of the German design, to have that perfectly flat skirt front to back. So the M38s would have flat skirts. You can see some M38s that were actually made with M35 shells, and you can see a lot of M35s converted to the 38 pattern, so it's just kind of a collector's nomenclature because they're all pretty much known as the same thing. I just call it the M35 38 because it's really hard to tell. You don't throw away a shell if you're making the next model of helmet that didn't change much, if just because it has this taper, because it's not correct for the model. They recycled everything. You don't throw anything away, especially when there's a World War II going on. So obviously you could see the kind of Finnish style of rivets. The M40 here you can see has the traditional German 3 style set up for their rivets, and split pins. Like I said, the whole helmet split pins. The German ones are like split pins, but you can see these are more like rivets, even though you can remove them pretty easily. So you can see the German kind of M40 stamped in, very kind of lower profile vent lugs here, and you can see where this was an M40 at one point because it has its extra chin strap hole. So when it was converted to a 55, that would be just left as an open hole in the shell. So that's a pretty good way to tell if you had an M40 at some point, a Finnish M40, because Finns would take M40s from all over a bunch of countries and they would just put their own liners and chin straps in them until they decided that they would just go to the one-piece liner and chin strap in 1955, which is in this helmet. So you can see a lot of the Finnish helmets, even the World War I era helmets, when they would go get their liners put in, they would have these extra chin strap holes drilled because the Finns really just liked that system of having the separate chin strap from the separate liner, because it eased kind of logistics a little bit. Instead of making one complicated thing, you can make two simpler things. And then if one breaks, you don't need to junk all of it. You only need to replace that part. So basically all of the Finnish helmet designs would have this up until 1955. Obviously, if they didn't break, if they got a German World War I era stahlhelm and the chin strap never broke on it, they probably wouldn't put this rivet in it. But if the liner did ever have to be replaced, or the chin strap did ever have to be replaced, they would take their helmets and they would drill these extra holes into them to allow them to use their chin straps and their liner system. So you can see here on the Hungarian one, as the kind of more aggressive input separate piece style of vent holes, the same exact kind of rivet layout, the Finnish style with the washer and everything, but this one's obviously been painted. Before, the Finns would standardize on this kind of stone gray. This is what they would use, this kind of a lighter olive drab green, and in 1955 they would standardize on this kind of stone gray paint. In the rear you can see the bracket. This one was obviously an M40, so it never received its bracket. The Finns did really like the Hungarian 35s and 38s with this little bracket though, which kind of surprises me because you see this feature used so much in photos, this bracket in use. I'm surprised they didn't put it on the 55 pattern helmet, to be honest. I'm surprised they did away with it. They must have thought it wasn't necessary or came up with some other way of attaching your helmet to your bag or something, where they didn't need this little bracket anymore. So going into the liners, these are both obviously Finnish liners, but you can see the kind of earlier style Finnish liner would be more of the German one. It's obviously this kind of naturally tanned leather. The liner is stitched together by one piece there in the back. The spacers for the shell, because the liners came in different sizes and the shells were only made in like 3 or 4 sizes. They have cork spacers between the liner and the shell. Drawstring at the top, foam behind it. Very common for Finns. You can see these kind of very annoying kind of split pin rivet things that they have that go through the foam, and the nice liner band. So these M35s and M38s would have this, it's going to be kind of hard to see, this stiff kind of band, and you would see that basically continue to be used here on the M40. You would see that the chin strap would switch to black. A lot of the German helmets that they were getting as aid would have black chin straps. Basically every other helmet they would get as aid would either have a fabric chin strap or a brown chin strap like this, but you can see it's, for all intents and purposes, the same chin strap. Roller buckle, you know, with the prong, tooled leather, went from this is veg tan, I'm guessing, to chromium tan leather. You could tell by the fact that it has this kind of bluish tinge into it. That's a great way to tell chromium leather. If you have a nice cross-section piece where you could see that kind of blue-gray tinge, compared to a lot of the veg tanned leather, which doesn't have that. So even though this is a kind of burnished edge, I'm pretty sure this is a like vegetable tanned leather. Most vegetable tanned leather too isn't going to be dyed any weird colors. They went to a chrome tanned, obviously, liner, and the liner has 2 stitching pieces, so you could obviously use waste a lot less leather if you make it in 2 pieces rather than in 1 piece, kind of like the Hungarian M38 over there. It's just kind of a ease of manufacture. Other than that, it's the same thing. They're both put in post-war, obviously post World War II, because the finish during the war liners would look a little different unless, like I said, they got the helmet from somebody and it never broke. Then they would go to this kind of German World War II era stahlhelm multi-tongued liner. So they're both in size 58. They're both rolled rim helmets. They both weigh pretty close to the same, but they're pretty cool and neat like that. So I will say this though, this M40-55 helmet does not have any spacers on the liner, despite the fact that the liner is the same size. So it leads me to believe that either the sizings on the shells were different between the Hungarians and the Germans and the later Finns and stuff like that, because these are both the same liners and they both fit the same. But you can see where this liner has a bunch of spacers between the shell, and there's much more space between the shell than on the M40-55 here. So I don't know if that's just something they changed or if that's a coincidence, or if they just had a lot larger shells and they needed some smaller liners put in them, so they're like, throw some cork spacers in there, call it good, it'll work. It's all very real possibilities. Anything goes in Finland when it comes to surplus equipment, so because you never throw anything away. All right, so now that we've compared those two, we're going to go back and I'll put this helmet on. We'll simulate going prone with it. I'll tell you about the fit and the feel of it and everything like that, and then we will conclude the video. And we're back. So let's put it on. It's a good thing I got my hair cut here, so my helmet fits a little bit better because my hair grows in so thick. Obviously when you have a non-adjustable helmet liner, your helmet gets a little bit tighter as your hair grows, because I don't wear these all the time, so I don't stretch them out, even though I have a lot of them. But we'll put them on here. Pull the chin strap down. Okay. So, it fits like a German Stahlhelm, surprisingly. I know, hard to believe, something that's based off the German Stahlhelm would fit like a German Stahlhelm. Surprisingly comfortable. Chin strap is pretty standard for the era. It's a little dry. Chin strap feels a little dry. Could probably use a little bit of some leather grease, but other than that, the actual liner itself fits really nice. I'm not really getting too many. There's kind of one spot right up here by the forehead band, because I think it's not perfectly shaped to my head yet because I haven't worn it, where I get a little bit of a pressure point. But other than that, it feels like it's distributing the weight very well. It feels very stable on my head. It doesn't rock around or move too much. And this is what it would look like. Like I said again, how I size all of my helmets for height is you want to be able to go just below the skirt, all right? And you want to be just below your ear canals. So you want your fingers to touch the edge of the helmet, and you want to be able to poke just below your ear canals. That's how I do it, so that way it seems to be where it's not going to obstruct my vision very much, and it's going to offer the protection. It's also going to protect my ear canals from sonic blasts and everything if something was to go on. I think that's just a great way to start how you would size your helmet if you're new into helmet collecting, to make sure that it fits you correctly. Obviously you can change your preferences and stuff like that. That is just how I do it. I think it's a pretty logical way to do it. So that way you could still hear a lot of your ambient noise. You're not going to have the steel covering your entire ears, obviously, to where you won't be able to hear. But it's also going to protect a lot of that shock wave in an explosion or something like that from obviously damaging your hearing. So just a way for me to do it. And I think it's a great way to size a helmet, because then you know exactly how every helmet is supposed to fit, exactly how to adjust it, you know, because it's the same exact standard for every helmet. So I think it's a great way to size your helmets. That way you don't just have like, oh, this one feels kind of right. I size them all exactly the same way, so they can all be compared to each other in the exact same way. So obviously this is the Hungarian M35 38 from the front view, very German looking, obviously. Here we have it from the side profile. As you can see, that probably kind of accentuated that extra kind of degree change here in the skirt, to allow for obviously better operations with winter equipment, backpacks going prone and stuff like that, which we'll test now here from the rear. So if I look up, hopefully the helmet will not be, you know, touching my back or anything like that, and there'll be a little bit of space there to accommodate obviously a wool uniform of the era and equipment. Perfect. It doesn't touch at all. It probably gets pretty close, but I don't feel it touch, so that's pretty good. Or if it does touch, it's only touching my shirt light enough for me to not feel it. So it doesn't rock forward in front of my eyes, which means I still should be able to obviously get a clear sight picture while going prone with my rifle and everything like that, which is good. It's a very thing that a lot of people didn't seem to quite get when they were sizing helmets, as to why a lot of Germans didn't like the stahlhelm design, and that would be why. And then this is obviously the left side profile. So fun fact, that you could actually see pictures of this done in World War I, and later during World War II in the 1935 design, they would cut the skirt back a little bit, because that helmet bite, as they call it, the nape bite, which is this kind of section, the nape of your neck here, the nape bite of the helmet was so bad in World War I that you would see Germans, because the chin strap is almost right in the center of the helmet, they would flip their helmet around backwards, all right, and then, you know, you ride it down a little bit so you can see. And this is actually a pretty common thing you would see done with the stormtroopers, because the relief cut for the bill up here was so much higher that if you flipped your helmet around, you could still sight your rifle, but your helmet would, you know, obviously have much more space for you to go prone with, so your helmet would not obstruct your vision or anything. So it's a neat feature of the stahlhelm. A lot of people really don't know, but that's something you could do if you are planning on your impression, having a backpack or something like that, or if you're out in a reenactment, you have your tornister on or something, you can wear your helmet backwards, and it won't interfere with your equipment as much, and you can still shoot, and it won't get in your way, it won't get in your eyes, hopefully, and you'll be able to keep your coconut from getting cracked. So just a neat feature. A lot of people didn't know about the stahlhelm, but it's actually something that I would like to see more of in the reenactment community and stuff like that. A lot of people don't know why soldiers did that, and it's just because you get a little bit more room if you flip your helmet around backwards for your equipment, so your helmet doesn't rock forward in front of your eyes like this so you can't see. So the Hungarian M38 helmet would serve for quite a while with police forces and, you know, reserve units and firefighters, actually, after World War II. But as they would fall under the Soviet aura of influence, they would obviously start receiving SSH-40s pretty quick. It would be replaced by the SSH-40 with frontline soldiers almost immediately in the 50s. So it's just, it wasn't super long served. Finland would obviously use them into the 50s and into the 60s until they would get enough 55 model helmets to supplement them. But it's a really, really awesome helmet, I think. And I like, the best feature about it is it's a German helmet, basically, that's affordable, and it has the cool little bracket on the back for attaching it to your equipment, which people don't understand how awesome that is until you could just hook your helmet to your backpack. You don't have to worry about carrying it or picking it up anywhere or leaving it or somebody taking it. You could just hook it right onto your hook it right on to your equipment and keep walking, and then you can just wear your hat, which is a lot lighter and more comfortable. So hopefully you enjoyed this video, and you subscribe if you like this sort of thing. I'll get right on editing this video. I have no idea when the next one will be. as you know, stuff with work and everything, time off and whatnot's kind of hard to come by, and living out of town. But hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hopefully it's enough to hold you over for a little while, and I will see all of you here in the future. Bye-bye now.